Welcome, everyone, to the Voice of Singles. This is our sophomore episode, and we're so excited to have all of our guests today. We have Abby and Daryl Brooks, Sarah D. Orlando, and Glenn, and is it Yvette or Yvette?
Yvette.
Yvette. Okay, Yvette Henry. So, welcome you all. Thank you so much for being on today. I'm going to give you all a minute to just go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Who do you want to go first?
You, because
We
you
can
said
start
so.
with
right.
Abby.
Let me introduce myself.
You're going to introduce us.
All right. So we are Glenn and Yvette Henry. We run a couple media companies. One of the media companies is called Belief in Fatherhood, where we just highlight the beautiful, natural state of fatherhood and what happens behind the scenes of all that. We've been doing that for almost 10 years. Yvette and I both have a podcast called How Married Are You, where we document the true story of love when you're pursuing it, in a very delicate manner. And then we also are authors now. We just got a book deal. So we have books coming out this year, and we live in California, have 4 kids. And that's pretty much us.
Sounds good. Well, I just want to share this with you guys. When my dad passed away in 2019, you all's YouTube channel helped me because,
Mhm.
I'm the only girl with 4 brothers. So I watched you all's family with your little girl and your 3 sons, and it just helped me to feel like I was a part of a family again when my
Oh,
dad passed away. So it helped me to heal.
Wow.
sorry for your
Thank you for
loss.
sharing that.
Yeah.
Oh, no problem. All right. So we're going to turn it over to Abigail and Daryl Brooks to introduce yourselves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abby, and this is my husband, Daryl. Daryl and I have been married for 12 years. I am a licensed therapist in Washington, D.C., in the state of Maryland. And I'm also an author of the book, From Dated to I Do, A Christian Woman's Guide to Praying, Planning, and Preparing for Her Future Husband.
Okay. Sounds good. Sarah, it's your turn.
No.
Oh, go ahead. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm Daryl. Daryl, her husband. So she's the counselor, the relationship coach, the author. So I'm just kind of here, just to well, I don't want to say co-sign, but it's a couples podcast. So I mean, echoing everything she said about us.
And we also have 2
Yeah, we have
children.
2 kids. We live here in the DC metropolitan area. And yeah, I guess whatever else, we'll learn as we talk.
Okay. Sounds great. Now, Sarah.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sarah, the Chief Hope Giver of Sarah Day Orlando Coaching. I have been married for 14 years, almost 15 years, to my college sweetheart, Andres, and we have 2 little girls, 6 and 2, or almost 2. And I published Love Letters from Poland, which is a memoir of my healing journey and how God just chased me and found me in Poland and restored so much brokenness from my past that we'll probably get into a little bit today while I was living abroad. And I have a new book coming out called Awaken Hope.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, this is what you all came for. We're talking about if abstinence is the requirement for singles until marriage, how do we know the sex is going to be good? So, what better people to bring on to talk about this but married people? How many years in is each couple, by the way?
So we've been married for 14 years. And
Okay.
yeah,
It'll be 15 this year.
yeah, August
August.
7th.
It feels like August is close, but it's not actually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
14 years.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. What about you guys?
12 years going on 13 in
Okay.
October.
And Sarah?
And then we celebrated 14 on New Year's Eve.
Okay, sounds great. Okay, so I want you all to talk about what your mindset was while you were single and your relationship to abstinence before you got married. Anyone can start.
Start.
So I could go ahead and start. So what my mindset was in relation to absence, my father um, had he was a preacher, and on my 16th birthday he gave me a promise ring and the promise was before myself and before to myself and before God, to keep myself before marriage, to stay a virgin to. I was married. My father really, taught that within the home amongst myself and my siblings on the importance of purity and keeping yourself pure until marriage. So that was my goal as far as, entering in teenage years and adolescence and college. But I did not stay a virgin. So I wasn't a virgin when I got married. But
Okay.
growing up, it
And what
was,
about you,
oh, abstinence.
Okay. What about you,
Okay,
Daryl?
we thought our internet went out. Sorry about that. So for me, it wasn't very strongly taught in the home. But I remember my mom telling me, that was God's intention and God's will for us. And I also went to a private Christian school, so that was taught. But I kind of just observed the world around me, and I just noticed how complicated this sex just made relationships and just kind of like the fallout of it. So I kind of made up my mind when I was in high school, going into college, that I was going to kind of go into that season, that situation, just being abstinence, because it just of course, being obedient to God, but it just made sense to me. And it just the more I got into college, again, it just became more apparent. To me, I just never understood why people just kind of overcomplicated their relationships or overcomplicated, or I guess exposing themselves to things like diseases or unwanted pregnancies. When it could just so easily be avoided. And I guess for me, maybe my thought process was like that because I kind of looked at the end in mind. So I know I wanted to, I come from a two-parent household. So I knew that that's what I wanted from, for me in my future. I knew that once I graduated college and stuff, that I wanted to get married, have a stable life, wanted to have kids and things like that. So everything I kind of did always kind of went in that direction, gravitated in that direction. So my behaviors and my actions kind of went to did things that was conducive towards that. So that was my mindset towards abstinence. Anytime I met a young lady, even though, of course I had sexual temptations of course, I view, women in sexual way, but at the same time, I didn't want to compromise the act, getting to know the women and getting to know and getting to form the actual relationships in themselves by diluting it with sex and not knowing whether I like them or the way they made me feel. So yeah, that was kind of my mindset on abstinence.
Okay, sounds good. I would like to dive into that more, but I'm going to give everyone else a chance to respond. So, what was
Yeah,
your mindset?
yeah. So
Uh, Go ahead.
I'll go. Yeah. So I grew up in a single parent home, joint custody back and forth. Not really practicing believers. I think cultural Christian is how I would call it. Thanksgiving or what do we go to church?
Easter.
Easter, Christmas, Mother's Day. That type. So it wasn't a standard of living. It wasn't a standard of life until I like started a relationship with the Lord for myself, which was at around 2005, and getting saved, and then like creating that standard of like, oh, this is my commitment to the Lord. My body is a sacrifice, a living vessel for the Holy Spirit. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not here to, just run around and please my flesh. And so that was kind of the standard going into my new believing life. And I met Yvette in 2009 and 2007, and we became a couple in 2009. And Yvette.
Yeah, I grew up in a two-parent household. I grew up in the church. My dad was a preacher. My mom was the church secretary, choir director, junior women's auxiliary leader. I was very much so at church every day of the week. And growing up, I was not only hearing it from like my parents, but I was also hearing it from the church that, you just don't have sex till marriage. There wasn't really any education behind that. It was just, this is what it is. There was no discussion about what sex is in marriage and how God intended it or anything like that. There was no talks about sex and like what you should like what it even we made it to our wedding night and I didn't even know what went where. That's
Very
how
frustrating.
that's how virgin I was. So it was kind of like, yeah, it was just that was kind of, I guess that's it. That's my answer. That's how it was going into marriage, is that just don't have sex until marriage. And I am an achiever. And I'm also a people pleaser. So I know that it was a decision I made for myself, but for a long time it wasn't, like it was just something that I was like, oh, this is a box to check. So let me check this box. It wasn't necessarily something that I feel like I genuinely desired for myself in that way, but I'm glad I did. I just know that as we're raising our children, we're having different conversations about sex and the decision to wait until marriage.
Okay, so I want to know a little bit more about how the switch flipped for you, Glenn, as well as Daryl. You said when you began to have a relationship with God for yourself. So what did that look like?
Well, I didn't know what God's standards were. I didn't know. You know what I mean? I wasn't around any other men before that could model that. I just
Mhm.
thought, you know, these were women were for my pleasing. You know what I mean? Like my relationship toward women was just very, it was all about sensation, and so it,
Mhm.
how it flipped is that I had an encounter with some men, and then I had an encounter with God that was like, oh, like this is actually very average behavior. Like every man is led by, what I'm saying, his male parts to go pursue the things that he feels like are necessary, uh, and I don't like
Mhm.
being average. Like I hate that, you know what I'm saying? And so part of
Mhm.
the pursuit and being like, a good follower of Jesus is just like, man, I want to experience what God has intended for me, not what I'm taking from people. You know what I'm saying? And so
Mhm.
that, like, it was really like a pursuit of righteousness, I would say. Uh, that was really something that I had high expectations on the other side,
Mm.
though. Like I would
Mhm.
wait, and then like the sex would
Then he
be,
married me.
it was supposed to be something crazy. You understand? Because I controlled myself. Like it was really like I didn't realize I was making that transactional, agreement with God. And he was kind of like, I don't know, that had nothing to do with me. Like we didn't talk about that. So uh
Mhm.
life on the other side of that was very interesting for us.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, did you ever get to that promise? Because it may not start out there, but you got to work at it. That's what the elders say. You got to work at it. You got to practice, practice,
Yeah, it was
practice.
a lot of that, but it was like 6 years of like, you know, I'm gonna just talk here. Sometimes I don't speak with a lot of care because I be trying to be funny, right? But right, so
Mhm.
sometimes when I would try to talk to Yvette about what I would like in the bedroom, she kind of go, oh, la, la, la," like she was like a complete, see, like she was like childish. She did not want to talk about it. She was embarrassed by the conversation, but because she was never taught how to have those conversations, so it was super hard. I would say we say it's about 6 years of just terrible intercourse. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow.
To where we had to work at it, and you know, I'm upset with God, like straight up, like I'm mad about it. You know what I'm saying? Just because I'm kind of like, what am I doing wrong here? And even trying to,
Mhm.
but it's really about Yvette's journey. You know what I'm saying? Like she had to
Mhm.
conquer some things in her relationship with the Lord and her relationship with her own body that would give her permission to give me access
Mm.
in a way that didn't feel like she had to protect herself, you
Mm.
know. And so that a lot has transpired from that moment, but being patient during that time, right? Because I wasn't letting her feel that, but it was just between me and God. Like I don't know how long you trying to do this. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm like really irritated.
Yeah.
Um, but
Mhm.
it was really something that Yvette had a decision to make. She had some big girl conversations she had to have with herself. That wasn't about me. It was about her and her experiencing what she was entitled to in the marital relationship.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a beautiful
Mhm.
journey, especially how you were protecting her in that, how you weren't allowing her to feel that, but you kept that between you and God. That's an amazing nugget for marriage for
Hmm.
people, and not just on the male side, but even for women to protect their husband with certain things that they're going through. It looks like you have something you want to share, Yvette.
I don't. I think I was taking it all in because we're relatively far removed from that season. Um, but I'm like, oh yeah, that was rough. I'm just grateful for his patience
Mhm.
and his grace through it all. Because I don't know very many men who would have either been faithful or stuck through that. So I think it speaks a
Hmm.
lot to my husband.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's amazing. So we're going to come back to you all. So Daryl, you said you didn't grow up in the home that taught on abstinence. So you kind of got that lesson on your own while you were in
Well, it's not
college.
that they didn't. So it was more about mom. It wasn't like strictly like kind of like beat into my head. But if my mom, I remember my mom telling me that. And then, then me, us, we did go to church. We went to church frequently. And me learning that going to church. Um, but yeah, it was something that for me, that it was something that I had to like kind of truly embrace on my own because it wasn't just something that was heavily instilled into me. But I mean, as far as a switch flipping, it wasn't so much of a switch flipping. I think I've always just in any sort of seeking any sort of relationship. I've just always sought like a sense of intimacy, and so I couldn't imagine starting off immediately, just starting off a relationship with having sex with somebody and thinking that that was going to bring some sort of intimacy. I think I thought I would want the intimacy before getting into the sex, so the sex would be better. Um, so that's
Yeah.
how I always viewed it. And so oftentimes when dealing with women, I would kind of maybe see through some things, some red flags or whatever, before even getting to a certain point with them, because it's like, okay, and that's why I made the statement, it's better to just like to not do that at all than get to start doing it, and then not, and then seeing the red flags and not knowing, okay, am I sticking around just because you know I'm willing to deal with the person their flaws, or I'm sticking around because the sex is good. Um,
Okay. Um, so you all had the opposite experience. So you were a virgin, Daryl, when you and Abigail got married, and then you had had sex before. So how was you all's experience coming together?
wait, you want to answer first, or you want me to answer?
So for me, well, before we came together, I know when we were dating, when Daryl first told me he was a virgin, I felt a lot of guilt,
Mm.
like I wasn't worthy to, marry a virgin, or why are you even talking to me? Even though I didn't have a large number of sexual partners, I felt that I was a little bit more experienced. So it was a lot of like, even though I had asked God to forgive me, I had repented, and at that time I was still, maintaining abstinence. I always felt like that, okay, I'm just going to, marry somebody or date somebody that was also abstinent and, was also coming into the, relationship sexually experience. But when Daryl told me he was a virgin, it took me a while to actually, accept that. I was like, really? A guy that's a virgin? Like, it was a very taken aback and not really something that, I expected. So I had to, um, during that season, like really accept what God had for me and not beat myself up or blame myself like, Lord, am I really worthy of this? Like, why would you send me a guy that is still a virgin? Like what's going on? So mentally and spiritually, I had to really accept that piece. And Daryl really had to say it's okay. I know where you're at now. Like, I'm not looking at where you came from, but here is who you are now, and I'm really liking the person that you have become. Um so, as far as like getting married and going into it, because it was a while for me when we did, get to that honeymoon. Now I felt like I had to relearn some things. So even though, I, wasn't a virgin, during the time that we had met and we were dating, I was, abstinent. So it wasn't the it wasn't the best that first night. So it was still us really learning and growing and learning how to communicate what we both liked.
So I would say there's a huge part of that you're leaving out. So I would
Okay.
say, so just because we were abstinent before marriage, it doesn't mean that we didn't talk about it, or we didn't, or we weren't in touch with our sexuality. So meaning it wasn't a mystery as far as like what the expectations were, or what the things we desired, and things of that nature. It just became when it came time to do certain things, having that realistic expectation that I knew that more than likely, it's been a while. So for her, so the physiology of things are going to be kind of, you know, so I understood that aspect of it, and I had patience with it, had patience with myself. Um, but I mean, eventually, just kind of navigating that and working through, just my inexperience, um, I guess her having to get used to certain things again. We kind of navigated. It did take a while, but I think the thing that really helped is us just knowing our sexual compatibility, and in the dating phase, and allowing ourselves to really know that we were sexually compatible. So I think just because we're abstaining, it doesn't mean that you and your partner should not have awareness of your sexual compatibility, that and knowing what
Okay.
your
And
expectations are.
Okay, thank you. And Sarah, I know you shared a little bit about your experience before you were married, and you had to. Did you recommitted yourself back to abstinence right before you got married?
No.
Oh, you didn't. Okay, well, tell
I've
us
got a
about it.
story.
Lesson
I've got a
learned.
story. So, parallel tracks of what I did versus what I knew I should do. And a lot of it stemmed from trauma. I was sexually abused as a kid. And so there was this path of, I know what I should do, but I felt dirty and I didn't really care. And so it was actually after we were married that I came back to the Lord. And He brought so much healing. And the way that my husband grew up Catholic and he wasn't walking with the Lord at all, ever. And I remember when we were dating, he would say, I could never marry somebody without sleeping with them. And we had already been together, so it didn't matter to me. But it was by God's grace that He always said, I don't want to know your past partners. It doesn't matter. Like, He had that grace for me. But it wasn't until we were married for about 2 years when the Lord brought me back to Him. And so we were already married and had that established, and we started to seek the Lord together. So it was a little backwards. Um, but I had a lot of shame because of knowing what I should do and conversations, but they were too late. My parents weren't aware. So it didn't seem like there was, although I was never raped, I technically was a virgin, but I had been molested, and I just, it didn't matter to me. And so I continued on what I wanted and how I wanted to feel loved, um, because it just seemed like rules at the time. Abstinence was just, a thing I should do, not because I love the Lord and that He knew how much, or that I knew how much He loved me and had better plans.
Okay. Wow, that was a lot, Sarah. I'm so glad. I had no idea that you came from that far to where you are now. That just shows the work that God has done in your life. So I'm really thankful for that. And thank you so much for sharing. So we're going to get to question number two. So, what's the first thing that comes to you all's mind? And I'll start with Glenn and Yvette. When you hear someone ask if we're waiting until marriage for sex, how do we know the sex is going to be good? What would you say to that person?
I don't.
What do you mean? I mean, I guess
Yeah.
like what do you mean? I guess the sex is gonna be good. It just seems like I
Well, it's an excuse that people use, to say that the sex is going to be bad, so we might as well practice. It's the same thing with drive the car before you buy it.
Mhm.
yeah, I think I mean, like I think there's this is biology. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not, if you work at it, it will be good. I think the bigger question is like, do you know how to communicate? Like, do you know how to manage your finances? Are you able to do tasks without wanting to fight each other? Like these are like, there's more to be done besides that. I think that's an excuse that people use because they don't want to be stuck with bad sex, right? And I think, if you're with someone for that long and you don't know how to, tr- for lack of a better term, but like train them on how you want to be pleased or vice versa, like I think there's like a competency issue on the individual saying that, right? I think that it's just an excuse. And I remember there was a celebrity, Tyrese, was going around for a long time when him and uh, Reverend Run were like hanging around. He was like, "I'm not marrying nobody with they got good sex. I can't do it. I'm not." You know what I'm saying? It just was like it's very shallow. Made you feel like you were on it's like a interview or like a performance type of test to see if you could meet up to this person's expectations when we know that men's libido drops as they age and women's increases, right? So what's to say you're going to
Mhm.
sustain that person? You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think it's very ego driven. And I think if
Mhm.
people are asking that question, um, I know for a fact that with Yvette and I'm conforming to who she needs me to be over time, right? And I know that she's one of my greatest asset, right? So if I invest in her, like I believe I will get a return, whether it comes a year from now, 2 years from now, whenever. And I don't think people think about relationships that way. I think it is very, what can you do for me now, right? Um,
Mhm.
it's almost like a job. That's what jobs do.
Mhm.
It's not a
Mhm.
job;
Very
it's a
self.
covenant.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Okay. Would you like to add anything to that, Yvette?
I feel like I was one of those people because when we first started dating, Glenn was like, he didn't want to kiss until our wedding day. He was like, no kissing until our wedding day. And I was like, well, how will we know if we have chemistry? Like, what are you talking about? No kissing. yada yada yada. And so it's interesting because I feel like a lot of things you don't understand until you're in it. And the one thing I can talk about is parenting. I remember when I was like just not a mom, and I had friends who were moms, and they'd be like, "Well, we gotta leave because we gotta get home and take a nap." And I'm like, "What? Like, just stay." But then I became a mom, and I understood. Oh no, that nap time is valuable, and I'm not going to miss it for nobody and nothing, right? And so when you're in marriage, like before you're married, you're like, oh, we need to have this connection, this chemistry, this whatever. But then once you get married, you realize, oh shoot, like it's not always going to be glitz and glamour, and we have to work for that. Like we
Mhm.
have to put in the work for that. We have to get to know each other. And for 6 years, I wasn't willing to have that conversation about sex, to talk through like, okay, this is what's working for you. This is what it was all about him. Like I always viewed it as like, as long as he gets to, you know, then we're good. I never viewed it as a pleasurable experience for me, you know. And so I feel like those conversations are important. And so if I were to speak to anyone, especially a woman who was having that conversation before marriage, I would just say, girl, you are just gonna have to get in there. You don't need to know that, because if you really love this person the way you say you do, then you will work for that sex life that you desire. And that once you put in the work and have those conversations, it can become something really beautiful for both people involved.
Okay, I love that. All right, Abigail and Daryl.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too. How do you know that sex will be good? If you really believe that God has called you to marry this person, who doesn't know you better but than God, right? So it's also about your trusting who God is in your life, and Him knowing who you are more than you know yourself, right? So He's not going to lead you into a marriage where the sex is quote unquote, bad or anything like that. It's you having to trust God and knowing who He is to you, and Him, leading you to this marriage and leading you into this relationship, knowing, who you are and what you desire and what you need. Um, and also understanding too that sex is also about communication. It's not, it's really about getting to know, kind of like what Yvette said, like what it is that you and your spouse, may need. But like Daryl said earlier, knowing what that is and having those conversations and not being afraid to have those conversations. I know in our premarital class at church, we had a book where it was guided on talking about, sex and asking those really tough questions and really being open and vulnerable, even if you're not comfortable in doing it just the two of you all, but maybe, going to see a therapist or someone at church, to help you have those guided, conversations. It's also important, but not really looking at sex as far as Glenn said, I just all about me, but what about looking at it, as a whole? So I do think that's kind of like a sex, kind of a selfish question, because I was asked that by my friends when I told them that Daryl was a virgin. Oh, well, how do you know the sex is going to be good, and how does he know what he's going to be doing and what you like? You have to, teach him.
Well, you won't have an STD, so you'll have plenty of time to
Right.
practice.
So that what Abby said was very nice. So I'm gonna add my spin to this. So it's I think first when that's the reason why I say it's good to know yourself. Just know yourself sexually, so you know what your boundaries are. But I would say in getting to know each other in a relationship, not to go past certain boundaries, but to allow yourself to see the person sexually. So I don't mind talking trash to her. So and it just and talking trash to her and just let her know that, hey, I desire you, and giving us something to look forward to. So
Wait a minute,
it's
wait a
all
minute,
about
wait a minute,
knowing your
wait a
boundaries.
minute, Daryl. You talking about tempting her before y'all was married?
no, not
This is what I
well,
want to do to
not
you, girl.
necessarily tempting, but telling her, telling her she looked good, and some things that some things I look forward to doing. Just kind of leaving that anticipation
So,
there to
so
know
wait a minute.
that
You
desire.
didn't
So you
want her to be
build it.
confused. I may be a virgin, but I still want you, girl.
Oh
You was
yeah.
letting her
So
know it's
you
about to
building
go
up
down.
that anticipation. So you building up that anticipation. So once the time comes, anticipation is already excuse me, is already there. But as far as also on the other side of knowing whether the sex will be good or not, also it's all about seasons. So the season, the beginning of your marriage is going to look different than when you have kids, and then it's going to look different than when you hit a certain age. So it's all about the level of effort. I guess going back to what I was just saying, you start off putting that level of effort in, as far as investing in and I guess in the whole sexuality of the relationship. And then once you get married, then you actually do it, and then you continue to invest in that, and you always make time for it, and and always make sure you're attentive to your partner's needs and desires, even despite if you have no kids. When you have kids, and the further you go into your marriage, always making it a priority, and always looking to to please each other sexually, and to see that as a priority in your marriage, despite whatever season that you're in, and just making it a priority. And I think from the get-go, once you all know that you all are both marriage minded, and you see this going down that road, to start making small investments then, and then to make the large investments once you get married, and then not to let up on it. And then you have to, I guess, be more conscious of that as life starts to happen with kids and things like that. And sometimes it's not going to be the way it was in the beginning, where you had to be more intentional, in certain seasons, like having kids, and as you get older with jobs, careers, and things like that.
Okay, that's good.
So always being intentional.
Okay. And Sarah, what do you think when you hear that question?
I see it from the standpoint of, if you give in and say, like, well, let's try it, that relationship is not concrete. Even engagements can break off, and the amount of pain and hurt and rejection that it can cause by just saying, like, well, let's just try it out. We don't know. Or we're just like, oh, we have such good chemistry, really love you. Like, I think we're going to stay together. So it doesn't matter if we're having sex now and we're going to get married in 2 months. It does matter, because, I've been rejected so many times, and the amount of pain and shame that like follows along. And there's also blessing in the obedience. I think there is blessing that God gives because of the commands and protection he's provided for us. There's going to be fruit that comes from that. And I also echo, like, there are different seasons in marriage. Like, sex was different with my husband when we didn't have kids. We waited for 6 years until we had our daughter, and then we had to adjust. But thankfully, like, we had really gotten to know each other and been able to communicate so well. My body was healing postpartum. Like, he was patient, and like, we had to try different things, and we made it work, and it was good. It was good again. I thought it was never going to be good again after kids, but it's good again. So,
Amen. All right. So yeah, and I echo that. If you're going to ask that question, you may need to reevaluate in your heart. Are you really ready for marriage? Because marriage is not a selfish situation. It, like Glenn said, it is a covenant, and you have to constantly deny yourself sometimes in that type of a relationship. So if you're going into it selfish, like, what can you do for me? How can you please me, etc., then you may not be in a position where you would be a good partner, where you can please your partner. And we all know we reap what we sow. So just keep that in mind. So, what was something that you all learned on the other side, now that you're married, about sexual purity that you didn't realize while you were single?
Um, I wouldn't say that where I didn't know, but I would say that I actually got to experience the result of it. So actually not having sex before marriage and then having sex after having sex in marriage, the level of intimacy and how good the sex can be, I guess once I'm not having anything else necessary to compare it to, or when our experience is just our experience alone. If that makes sense. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a whole lot of sense.
um yeah, so it's like I said, you know that that's the expectation before you have, but when you're absent before marriage, but when you're actually married, is actually experiencing that and seeing the result of that, and okay, and knowing that, okay, if I can, the way I always looked at it too, if I could be obedient to God and I could be faithful to God, and I could be faithful to my wife.
Mm.
So by being faithful to God and waiting to marriage, then I could be faithful to my wife in marriage, even when tempted by other women.
Hmm. Okay, good. And I like that you.
So again,
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go
I
ahead.
was going to say, I like that you brought that up about you all's unique experience where you don't have anyone to compare her to. Now, was that a challenge in you all's marriage, Glenn and Yvette?
That's my answer, and I'm sticking to that.
No.
Oh,
Yeah, it's gonna.
Okay.
I mean, like, I'm gonna be honest. Like, I would say that um, I was gonna answer that question completely different because I would say that it was hard because it wasn't about the kind of sex. Don't look at me like that because you're looking at me
I'm
like I'm gonna say
listening.
like if I say something wrong, I don't know what to say. I'm trying to answer.
I'm
Anyway,
listening.
so look, I would say that what was interesting, I think that I wanted more of Yvette, but I didn't have access because she didn't trust me. I think that the hard part is that women that I didn't make a covenant with trusted me more than she did, and that was hard.
Mm.
Okay.
That was a hard thing for
Okay.
me to reconcile in my mind. I would say if you were
Hmm.
asking me the question without the brother Daryl's, because I wasn't expecting to get that question. I would have said that it is almost as challenging
Hmm.
to not have sex before marriage as it is to consistently have sex while life is continuing to change because your partner
Mhm.
changes, and as the season change, you don't have the same partner, right?
Mhm.
Like who you married is not who you end up with.
Mhm.
My wife is completely different as a mother than she was as a daughter. You know what I'm saying? Because that's I married someone's daughter. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so
Hmm. Hmm.
like her coming into her womanhood
Mhm.
has like I'm watching her mature and grow. Like it's just been a different experience. So I would say that that is something that I've learned post before and after marriage.
You know what's interesting though is I would answer that question saying yes, because a lot of times when I was being intimate with Glenn, because I was such an achiever, because I knew the experience that he had, in my mind, I was like, I wonder if he's like, you know what I mean? Like, I
Comparing.
was thinking about his previous partners. I mean, obviously he answers the way he did, but that was something that was on my mind. And it was an insecurity of mine beginning of our
Mm.
union. And so it did take a lot
Yeah.
of growing, maturing conversations in order to grow out of that. I would say that that is no longer an issue for me, but from the beginning, it was.
Okay, I want to hear more about how you got out of that, because there's a lot of us out there that are virgins, and we may have similar experiences.
Yeah, I think that once I understood that it wasn't just about him, it made a complete difference. Like, because I literally went into it as a dutiful wife, not trying to experience pleasure for myself. And so when I understood that like he has to please me just as much as I have to please him. I guess I got a little bit more selfish
Yeah. Yeah.
in our in
Hey.
our interactions. I'm trying to keep it, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I just got a little bit more selfish about like I wasn't thinking about them because I was thinking about me and my pleasure. Does that is
Yeah. And it wasn't that I was
Mhm.
not trying to please you,
Yeah. Well,
because that's what
that's
it
not
sounds
bad.
like. So it wasn't that I was like not trying to please her. She just didn't like think she
yeah. Okay,
deserved
so
it.
I was I'm not saying that's what you say. It was it truly
Hmm.
was a me thing. I wasn't comfortable in my
Hmm.
own skin. I wasn't comfortable with my own body and with my own sexuality.
And you also chose ignorance on purpose.
And I okay.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Like she didn't want to know. Like seriously, like she wanted to not know. My
Hmm. So you were still trying to be the good
I,
girl, Yvette.
yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
You forgot the freak in the sheets part because they want a lady in the streets and then the freak
Yeah,
in the sheets.
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
You're right.
No, so yeah, I guess that is a huge part of it is that I even before Glenn, there weren't young boys. At that point we were dealing with boys. There weren't any of the male figures that necessarily made me feel sexy or like that I was someone that they desired in that way. And so I think when Glenn was desiring me in that way, it didn't feel natural for me, or like I didn't know how to receive that type of attention or
Mhm.
that type of desire. And I guess maybe I haven't even sat with it long enough to really like think about that. But yeah, I was very much so like the good girl. I've always been the good Christian girl. And yeah, mm, you guys,
Okay.
I gotta take it.
So how did you get over the shame of that? How did you transition from the lady to the freak in the sheets?
So, okay. So I guess we'll just,
Say it.
no, what? So Glenn, I think at the time that I started my turning point, and I think this is another conversation to be had as well, because a lot of us within marriage deal with certain challenges surrounding the bedroom and sex, but we don't want to have conversations about it because we want everyone to think, oh, we're thriving over here in this way. However, sometimes it really does take a village. And so
Yeah.
Glenn shared his experience with a guy friend whom I'm assuming said something to his wife. And then next thing you know, I'm getting a package in the mail um, that is
Okay.
like a book and some ointment
Lubricant.
and some like different things. And then
Yes.
we did end up having a follow up conversation. She didn't just send it and like, yay, do something with this. But we had a conversation, and it opened me up to actually opening up the book because the book was very like, oh, okay.
And here's anal. Like that's what it was about. It was
You
not a
know,
Christian book.
it was not a Christian book. It was a book about sex, but it was teaching me things about the
Hmm.
clitoris and like things that I
Hmm.
literally had not learned, y'all. Like I just didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I found myself reading through the book and then like say like having and then from reading what I was reading, I was like, hey babe, did you know? Da, 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 da. And
And I had to
then
be like, oh, really?
and then it like for me, I am competitive in some ways. And so I was like, we're gonna do the 7-day challenge where we're gonna have sex every day for 7 days.
It
Or
was
it was
long and
All
21
right.
21
days.
days or
Yeah.
something like that. And so I was
Oh
like,
wow.
let's just do it. And then we embarked upon it. And then I started finding myself open to having more conversations. And so it was really something that I just had to like push through. It was something where I realized that if I don't get a hold of this, then I'm not only going to like it's not only going to be a problem for me, but I'm also like making my husband vulnerable to seeking other ways to find the pleasure that he so desires to experience with me. And so I took on that responsibility and then just went and then here we are. I mean, we're
Okay,
still
that's
learning
awesome.
and exploring and, whatever, but there's we can have conversations and I can say, I didn't really enjoy that. Can you try this next time? Or, you know what I mean? But when I realized that it wasn't just about him, I think that is what really shifted for me, if that makes any sense.
Hmm. So the thing that keeps coming up is communication is key, because that seems to be the thing that's helping you all
Mhm.
along. And you guys reminded me of one of my friends. She's my former hairdresser, and she was at this bridal shower. And the church mothers gave the young lady who was going to be the bride a little bottle of KY jelly. So everybody just started cracking up laughing. So that's awesome. So yeah, you do need your community to help get you together. So Sarah, you said your husband was gracious, he didn't care about your past. So was there anything that stuck out to you that was just kind of like a highlight after you got married, um of this is why the purity conversation is important before marriage?
I definitely felt a lot of peace of mind, like, okay, I'm finally married. He's not, running away from me. And then that he never wanted to rehash the exes. That was so helpful. But purity wise, like it helps to abstain, like, you have memories, you have experiences, you have comparisons, which I have never voiced to my husband because it would be crushing. And so those are things that I have to continue to like give over to the Lord and say, like, help me forget these memories. Help me to
Okay.
be renewed.
Okay, sounds good. So, speaking of the topic, it's in relation to the next question: how can virgins prepare for the marriage bed? I'm going to share my screen so we can react to this. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the Stalwarts. I love them. And they're sharing about 5 mistakes they made as virgins on their wedding night. They talked about how they only booked a hotel for one day and they couldn't have sex the first time, so they needed more time. But this is the most interesting part that I want you all to react to and just share your thoughts on.
It's a debatable mistake. I have an opinion on this, but I mean, so I feel like it's not the truth is the way everything went, it wasn't bad. You understand? It's just that instead of going through some discomfort and some pain trying to get the guy you know what I mean by the guy. The guy trying to get the guy in first. I mean, it was literally like something that was so tiny. Nothing has ever gone there before. Fresh, literally virgin land. Fresh. Literally virgin land. Oh Lord. Oh my god. And one guy, it's just like you are trying to fit a camel into a needle's head. Exaggeration. Well, let's move on.
Okay, so I think that's enough. So essentially, they're talking about, and I hope this is not too much for some people, but they were talking about using their fingers because it was difficult for them to penetrate. So, what is you all's reaction about that?
I don't know. I need guardrails.
Question. What
Daryl,
is the question? Can you ask the question?
No, the question is just like, what is your initial reaction as a virgin? Like, you know,
So I could 100% relate to what this. I don't know about the hotel. I don't know about the one night, but no, the first time was challenging for the very reason because she was tight and I we had to have time for her to loosen up. And yeah, that does involve uh may involve fingers. We found out that the KY wasn't a good thing for us because of some what would you call it, physiological issues, but got some answers on what worked best as far as lubricant. And so once we kind of got past that area, then I mean we were good. But it did take some time. How long would you say? Like, what was it? Would you think after was it after the first year we kind of got past the tightness issue, or yeah, I would say maybe just kind of working through that first year and getting through the whole tightness issue. You know, then yeah, I mean that was the biggest challenge that I would say for us was just the whole physiological aspect of it, and just that part.
Okay, sounds good. Any other reactions on how can virgins prepare for the marriage bed or to that particular video?
I mean, I would say that in our experience, I think virgins need education, right? Like, you can't just step into there and just be like, I'm going to faith it through it. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not fair. You know what I'm saying? Because some people can feel like, no, I have to. It almost feels like a little bit like I want to prepare you, but I also don't want you to feel like I'm doing anything wrong if you don't know how your body's supposed to work, right? And so there's so
Mhm.
much that has to happen to loosen things up. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, sometimes people are like, why are you touching me? Why are you touching me? You know what I'm saying? Like, why are your hands there? It doesn't need that. That doesn't even need to happen. And actually, it does. But you know what I'm saying? Like, then it gets to a conversation of like,
Mhm.
this isn't even consent. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you don't want me to touch you there, I can't
Yeah.
touch you there. So it helps when people understand the process. I think the problem is in the church, like, you get the KY at the freaking bridal shower. You know what I'm saying? You should have knew that KY was coming during the premarital counseling. Like, that should have been a conversation you had a long time ago, right? Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I don't know.
Okay, this is good. This is good. And I just want to throw the Flow Out app out there as a resource for women to learn about their bodies because they have visuals and videos and all types of stuff so that people can get comfortable learning about their bodies. And when we say learn about our bodies, we're not talking about masturbation. We're just talking about being self aware about the different parts of your anatomy and how they work. Okay, Sarah, did you want to add anything on
I
that?
would think of it like women are a delicate flower, and yes, like understanding that process and that it takes time to be ready for intercourse. And so when I was living abroad in Poland, my husband and I were apart. He was in the States still. And so we had a little bit of that situation when we finally got back together. And I was like, oh, wait, let's pump the brakes. But we had the relationship and the communication already there so we could adjust and not cause pain.
Yeah.
Okay, oh, that's good. And that's another thing too is some people don't know that it may be painful the first time. So that's just something to talk about. But it gets better. It's not painful every time, right?
It shouldn't be.
No.
Okay.
If it is, see a doctor.
What you
I said
say?
it shouldn't be. If it is, see a doctor.
I was gonna say shouldn't be.
All right. Okay,
Right.
you heard it here. All right. So how can those who have been promiscuous before prepare to recommit their lives to God and practicing abstinence, and then later to be in a healthy marriage? Anyone?
I think it's about removing guilt, shame, um, allowing yourself to just kind of walk free. You know what I'm saying? And like really like recommitting yourself. Um, yeah, I think that's what it's about. You know what I mean? I don't know if yeah, I was very promiscuous. I think yeah, I was trying to think about it. Yeah, uh, I think that the hard part about it is that when you come from a place where you realize that sex outside of marriage is not really what it's meant for, and having sex in marriage, it's hard to release the shame from that too. Like there's still a little bit like, man, is this bad? Is this good? I don't know. And then with Yvette and I's situation, I still felt bad about it because I felt like she was only doing it for me. So part of me felt like I was taking advantage of her because she didn't really want to do it anyway. You know what I mean? So I don't know if we understand the ripple effect, of that decision of being promiscuous.
Okay, and I just want to add into there too that it's important for us as women to work through whatever it is, men too, that we're bringing to the table. Um, in our marriage so that we don't carry that into our marriage bed. Because, like you said, Sarah, you had experienced molestation, and that could have some ramifications too on your intimate experiences with your husband. And then Yvette, with her not having the back knowledge of how the sexual process works. But the difference is Yvette was willing to work through it. And Sarah, I'm sure you've been working through any of the trauma that you've experienced. So therefore, you all are able to stay
Yes.
together. Um, so it's so important that both couples, parts of the couple, the man and the woman, takes responsibility. Because some people just aren't willing to do the work and work through their stuff so that they can kind of be
Mhm.
that living sacrifice to their partner, so that the marriage can continue to stick together and bond. So that's important, because a lot of people just give up and they just get divorced. So I applaud each of you all for doing the work. That's
Thank
amazing.
you. One thing I wanted to
Um,
Russelin was that
yes.
I knew I needed to be honest with my, actually, I think he was only my boyfriend at the time, but I knew that I could not marry somebody that I wasn't honest with and that they wouldn't like accept me and my story. And so that really
Hmm.
laid the groundwork because I know some people that do get married and have these traumas that they've carried, but secretly, and then it all comes out, when they're married, and it just wreaks so much havoc and so much pain for both people.
Hmm. Amen. Did you guys want to add anything, Abigail or Daryl, to that?
The only thing I would suggest when preparing to walk out a life of purity while single is to make sure you try to find us a sing other singles that are doing it with you and not trying to do it alone, but having that community so you don't when you want to go back or feeling discouraged and feeling condemned, that you have like a person or a group of people that you can depend on.
Okay. Okay, so what were some of the lies that you all had to overcome from the enemy due to your experience or inexperience when you decided to be obedient to God in this area of abstinence or marriage?
Um, I would say coming from a aspect of inexperience um that I would not be able to satisfy my wife unless I had did it before. That lie. Um or just sometimes just your measure as a man, because a lot of times a lot of manhood is sometimes is synonymous with the amount of women you've been with, so not having to um equate my manhood with how many conquests I've had, and then again being able to be confident in going into a marriage knowing that I'm just as equipped to please my wife as anybody else.
Okay. Anyone else on this?
Russellin, we have to log off in a few minutes. Um, but
Okay.
I just wanted to give you a heads up. I'm sorry.
Sarah also
Oh,
said
no,
that
it's
too in the
okay.
chat.
Our children are.
You say what?
Sarah also said that too in the chat.
Thank you, Glenn.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. Well, before you log off, did you want to share any last words?
We'll stay on for one more question. Sarah, did you want to add anything?
Oh, well, I guess my last words are that the Lord can restore anything. So it is not a cop out for you to say, yes, we're going to have sex and then he can restore us. No, that is not the way to go. But if you have made poor choices, you have decided to believe those lies that, you're not worth it, you're worthless, or it doesn't matter, it does. But God loves you and his love is greater than anything. That we could ever do. So always seek his healing and his restoration.
All right, Sarah, that's an amazing ending. Thank you so much for being on, girl.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Yes,
All
sir.
right. So you guys have one more question. So I'm gonna give you guys this last question. So, for singles who are in engagement, how can they prepare for the sexual relationship in their marriage?
During
Practically.
engagement period.
Yeah. Well, while they're engaged, what can they be doing to prepare for the marriage that they're getting ready to walk into? So, the sexual relationship in the marriage that they're getting ready to walk into.
Stretching, reading, reading, reading. Like really like understand like reading good books on biology and how the body works. Men should know like where the clitoris is. You know what I'm saying? Like that
Mm-hmm.
women deserve orgasms as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like you know, and also sometimes just a crazy amount of patience. You know, because everybody doesn't operate at the same speed. And so I think it was our wedding night. She had kind of confessed that she didn't know where anything went. And I like ordered room service and was eating a cheeseburger on the bed. And I was like, you better call somebody because I don't know what to tell you. You know what I'm saying? I was like, you need to figure it out because
True story.
yeah, because I thought she was so like wanting to kiss and touch me and all that stuff before marriage. And then when it came time to get in the bedroom, she was just like all shy. And I was like, what is going on here?
Because you didn't see me naked before.
Yeah. I was like, we could turn the lights off. I didn't care. But we didn't like end up having sex. It's like our fourth night on our honeymoon. And I don't know if people know that.
The third night.
Third night. Okay. I don't think people know that is normal. You know what I'm saying? Like you have the rest of your life to get it. You know, you don't have to rush. And it's not a bad thing because it doesn't happen when you expect it.
We had in one of our premarital classes, one of the ladies shared that another couple that she had counseled the night of the wedding night, the husband, the newlywed husband, had brought a gift for his wife, and it was just a nice pair of pajamas. Like, I don't have any expectations of what this night is. We just had a really long day at our wedding. Like, here's some pajamas. You don't have to, like, there's no expectation. And so I feel like going into your wedding night with like no expectations is really good, and just being kind of, we should create something. Actually, sorry. Um, but
That's a good idea.
I feel like there should be a thing for like the wedding night, just kind of to like a progression. If you're virgins, or if your wife, like if one of the people is a virgin, I feel like there's a way to like ease into it. That's not like, you know. Anywho, I think that for me, I wish that I would have had more conversations. I wish that I would have read more books.
She called her mom.
I called my mom and I called a
Why didn't you ever tell me? Her mom was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm just sitting there like,
no, I called her.
on the honeymoon, she called her
on the wedding night.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
It was the morning after the Zoot ball.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It was not the night of, it was the morning after. Anywho, yeah, I wish, to answer the question, I wish I would have read the book that I got before. And actually, since that book, there have been other books. There's like, I forget the name of it. There's another book that I got, and it's like, it's pure biology. It's not necessarily a Bible based anything, but it's just biology of a woman's body and understanding it in that way. So I wish I would have had a book like that. I wish I would have taken like the opportunity to have more conversations. It was crazy because afterwards, I remember one girlfriend was like, well, we didn't tell you that you should do this and you should do that. And I was like, girl, no, y'all were with me and y'all didn't say nothing about this.
Losers.
Before.
I think they're losers. They're not friends.
Yeah. So I think
you probably were respecting her boundary.
I think a lot of people saw me how I saw myself, and they didn't want to be the one to like taint me, or you know what I mean. But to anyone watching this that has a virgin, like a friend that's a virgin who's about to get married,
it's a freaking.
You better have that conversation with
He says a freak in there somewhere. Amen. Because you know what? People are always stereotyping virgins,
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think the stereotype kind of helped you to stay in that
Yeah.
box. So it's like you have to have a natural curiosity.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. But it has been such a treat to sit and chat with you guys. Nice to meet you, Abby and Daryl.
Yes, sir.
And
Yeah.
I hope that anyone watching, they get all that they need.
Mhm.
This is a really good resource. I'm glad you're having this conversation, Wrestling. Um,
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you all so much for joining me tonight. It was such an honor to have everyone on: Glenn, Yvette, Abby, Daryl. Thank you guys so
Thank
much.
you.
Feel free anytime you want to participate, to join us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Have a great night. I did, if you guys have a minute to stick around, Abby and Daryl, I did send out the link if anyone wants to come up and ask you all a question. So I'm just going to share that now. If anyone wants to come up and ask a question to Daryl, myself, or Abby, the link is in the chat. So just go ahead and click that link, and I'll go ahead and bring you up so you can ask the question. And it's also on the Facebook comment as well. So I'll just wait a few seconds to see if anyone wants to come up.
Well, I guess while we're waiting to piggyback on what they said, thought it was real interesting that they brought up about books and things. Because one thing during, as far as how to prepare, one thing during our premarital class that we took through our church, that was actually part of it. That we read book, we openly talked about sex. We had assignments where we had to talk about it. We read books like how Yvette was describing, that talked about the anatomy, and basically caused us to have an open dialogue about it. So I thought it was interesting that they brought that up, because we actually had to do that as part of our premarital class through our church.
Which shows you
Okay.
that communication is part of sex. It's just not physical, but it's really about open communication, intimacy, transparency, vulnerability. And if you don't have that within yourself, it's going to be you're going to have a much harder time being able to connect with your spouse in a physical manner.
Oh, and that's really beautiful too, because sex is just
Hmm.
not physical, it's
Yes.
mental, emotional,
Yes.
spiritual. You're bonding in all of those ways. So how beautiful
Hmm.
is that, to bond with someone who is your spouse, that is in covenant with you, that is committed to you, and that's also committed to the Lord,
Right.
because it's just a beautiful experience, when you do it God's way. So it's
Mhm.
worth the wait. And Daryl, I really want to give you kudos for standing up against all of the things that men are up against, because like you said, it is a part of the culture where they teach men that manhood is how many conquests and so forth that you can have. So I think that is absolutely amazing that you were able to stand up against that pressure, and just say, hey, I'm going to stand for the Lord. So I really would like you just to encourage some of the men out there on what was it that helped you to just see that through to the end.
Well, always, of course, always focus on your relationship with God and His Word, but also walk around with the future in mind. So anything that is counterproductive to the type of future that you would know what it is you want in life. So anything that's counterproductive to you going in a certain direction, then don't go down that road. So if you know that there's a chance of if you sleeping around, that you can catch something, that you can knock someone up that you didn't want to knock up, and now the future things that you have control over, the future doesn't look the way that you wanted it to look, or the way that you thought God intended for you, then don't do those things.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you don't want to taint the relationship that you have with somebody, you can have you can meet the right person, but be engaged with be engaged in the wrong things, and you don't want to mess up that relationship, and you want to see it through to see if this is the person that God has for you to do things His way, and I would say 10 times out of 10, He'll show you that person in the light of day, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and you get to determine is that something you want to deal with for the rest of your life. Um, or there are red flags there to say, wait a minute, this person ain't all that, or they not all I thought they were cracked up to be. But it's a little hard to do that if your nose is wide open and you sleeping with them and they making you feel good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I would encourage men. It's stay focused, and you can apply that in so many areas of your life. But having that discipline, that focus on what it is that you're going towards, and and not focus on what everybody else is doing. Because I could look at a bunch of other people that are doing other things at the time when I was in college. I look at now, and again, that's one of those things in retrospect, looking back at it, said, oh yeah, that was definitely the right move, because now I see where some of them are at, and yeah, I'm glad I didn't do that. And
Mm-hmm.
and when I say that, that doesn't always look like multiple kids out of marriage or STDs. Sometimes it could just be the nature of their relationships and their marriages because of how they prioritize things in their past, or how they got with the person. It wasn't rooted in the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
So
right. And if you're not patient before you get married, like uh, Sarah said earlier, you won't be patient afterward, because she talked about how her husband was patient with her with the postpartum and all that stuff. Some men, they'll go out and cheat on their wives
mhm,
while
Right.
they're pregnant or while they're going through healing from, just having a baby.
right.
So that's something that is so important as men to work on it as well while you're single, so that you can cover your wife when she's in that vulnerable state. You
So
know.
learn to be faithful to God first, and
Yes.
then you'll know how to be faithful to your wife.
Hmm. And then also it helps men too with their money. The Bible talks about in Proverbs 31, which is the scripture they always throwing on us, which we love it,
Yeah.
we embrace it. But Proverbs 31 is for the brothers too, because that talks about men not giving their strength to women, or to that which destroys kings. So when you're making babies with women and that's not your wife, and then
Right.
when you do find your wife, now your
Right.
finances are split out up in several different
Yep.
households.
Right.
When you could have just had your finances in that one household that you would have waited on
Mhm.
God to bring you together with. Now we know
Yeah.
things happen. Sometimes people get married and get divorced and they end up in that situation, but we're not talking about that for this instance.
Mhm.
And then the
Right.
last thing that I want to share for the virgins out there, you're not alone, because a lot of times virgins feel isolated, and people make virgins the butt of the joke, or they assume that virgins are a particular way without talking to them, getting to know them,
Mhm.
and they may feel isolated. But we're not alone out there, you guys, those of us that are virgins out there. And no matter where you're at, if you've recommitted yourself to abstinence, you're not alone either, because there's other people out there who have also recommitted themselves to abstinence, like Sister Abigail, and
Mhm.
they're waiting on the Lord too. And the Lord can bless them with a spouse too. So I just want to encourage everybody out there to allow the Lord to keep protecting you, because a lot of times the world makes it feel like, oh, you're missing out on something. Oh, you don't
Mhm.
hit 40 and you still a virgin. You don't hit 35 or 50 or whatever and you're still a virgin, or you're still practicing abstinence and waiting on the Lord. Where has that gotten you? Well, it's got me peace of mind. I can stay focused on my goals and whatever God has me on. I don't have any baby father drama. I don't have any STDs, and I don't have to raise a child on my own, because God has protected me with his wisdom. The Bible talks about how wisdom is a defense. So it's a security and a protection around us. So when God has given us his wisdom to preserve ourselves and wait until marriage, it's a gift, and we have to see it as such. It may be difficult, it may be hard, because the woman who is easy, or the brother who is flashing his dollars, these people are never by themselves. The man who's flashing his money, he always has a girl. The woman who's giving her body away for free, she can always find a guy. But sometimes when you're doing the right thing, you're by yourself a little bit longer, because you have a standard. But that's okay, because the right person is going to value that. And you don't want to give yourself to everybody, because these people will misuse and abuse you. You want to give yourself to the one who values you, and you allow yourself to continue to be protected by Christ, by God, because that's what he does with his single daughters and his single sons, as we can see motto here. And even if you don't have the knowledge, the sexual knowledge like Yvette experience is, you see God brought her over and she's enjoying the joys of marriage. So we can all get there. So on that note, those are my final thoughts. Do you guys want to add any final thoughts?
Yeah, and I also just wanted to share my book for any single women out there that would like to have a book to share more about, to be encouraged about your single journey and what to expect and really how to prepare yourself for marriage. My book is being sold on Amazon, and I don't know, Rustlin, I can give you a link or something if you
Oh,
want to
I
send
have
it
the
to
link.
me.
The link is already in the YouTube, so they can actually just
Oh,
click.
okay,
They
okay,
can actually
good.
just
So,
click in the description box, and her link is already
okay.
there to purchase her book.
Okay, thank you. So yeah,
Mhm.
so this is also for any single women that want to know how to, prepare for marriage. And I dig a little bit deeper into my testimony as, being abstinent and, dating and marrying a virgin, and how that, was for me. So I encourage any ladies to purchase the book as well.
Yeah, it's in audio and book format as well. So you
Mhm.
get
Okay.
that through Audible.
All right, that is amazing. Well, thank you guys. I hope you guys
Thank you,
enjoy
Yeah,
the rest
thank
of
Rustlin.
you. Thank you
Thank
for having
you.
us.
Yes, this is really good and much, much needed, because that was beautiful too. But what you said, because sometimes you're going to walk this path alone just because you're being
Yep.
set apart from the
Mhm.
majority. And like the Bible says, narrow is the road. But I will encourage, singles to be, virgins and those that are saying abstinent to be open, and don't give up, and to continue to do what it is that God has called you to do, and God will do the rest.
Man, and some of us about to have a testimony. Okay, I
Okay.
got a testimony. God has been good to me. So expect it. Keep following God, and just like He leads you in your daily life, He's going to lead you when it comes time for you to be married or whatever it is His will is for you. We just joy in submitting to the will of God. Lord, Your will be done. Your kingdom come, in Jesus' name. So yes, and thank you all. With that said, great evening,
All
great
right.
night.
Thank
All
you.
right.
All right. Have
Love
a
you
good one,
guys.
All right.
everybody.